Hello, welcome to TGIS 311, Maps and GIS. This is the lecture for day one. My name is Gregory Lund and I'm the instructor for the course. This lecture is one of 9 or 10 lectures that you'll watch or participate in GIS 311. When we're in class this week, everyone will log into a computer. If you do not have a computer with GIS on it, then you definitely will need a USB drive. So be sure that you bring a USB drive to class. I will have you put your name on a tent card as large as you can write it so that I can learn your names throughout this next 10 weeks together. If you have, I should say you will be logging into the computers using your network ID. I've checked with IT. It looks like all of you, or 90% of you, have logged in previously. These are the directions. Normally in spring it isn't that much of an issue. Usually it's autumn or summer when new students start. But some of you may need to check with IT and may even need to visit WG 108 to get your computer access working. And that may take place on Wednesday in class. And as I say here, you may have to call them. The number will be on the screen. They'll have to reset your password. And to do that, they make you do it in person. And here again are the directions to logging in. They'll be on the screen when you get to the classroom. So starting out with the maps, it says Maps and GIS. This is from a couple years ago. 2022, March 2022. So it is about 2 years old. This is let's see, where is it from? Can't remember. It looks like either Al Jazeera or CNN video. But this map is interesting because it's hard to tell where the water is. Even though that they use blue, the color scheme isn't that great. And we don't have to start discussing this in detail now, but it's just to show you that some maps are out there that aren't that great. And you folks will be able to build maps better than this one as soon as a week or two from now. So it's an exciting time for GIS 311 students. Here's a general agenda. I will wait until a lot of the students arrive. I won't wait much past 10 minutes past the start time. I'll get students logging in while we wait for the rest of the students to show up. I will be in class around 3:30 every day for office hours, so that'd be usually Wednesdays, but whatever our class day happens to be. And on the first day of class, like I said, you'll be logging in. There'll be some introductions, some short lecture because I won't be getting through this entire lecture online, and some of you may not have seen it prior to class. The first week is a little bit wonky because you technically don't have to do anything until class starts. So this is the agenda. You can pause here and read it or review the PowerPoint slide deck that is available in Canvas. There may be some volunteer lab assistants that show up to class to give assistance, helping you when you get stuck. They won't necessarily give you all the answers, and they probably won't give you many answers, but they will help guide you to the answers so that you can continue in the lab. If we do have some volunteers, they'll be introducing themselves in class. They won't be doing it here on the video, on the online lecture. Canvas. There will be a separate video for Canvas of what's due, but just as an overview, it would be great if you had your image in Canvas. There is a course card image bonus you may want to check out. If you're good in the arts, you may want to change our course card and submit what you think would be a great one. I suggest only submitting one, however, because if you submit two, you're actually working against yourself because you may get votes across two submissions rather than all on the first one. The best way to navigate this course is through the modules. There is an A to Z reference course that I talk about in one of the assignments. That's a whole separate course in Canvas. And it's not really a course, it's more of a reference area for students to obtain other GIS information. It tended to bog down the main course, the 311 course, having all of these other items. So I've taken it out and made it into a separate quote-unquote course. Be sure to check Canvas to learn what you have to do each week. There are assignments with deadlines and some are non-negotiable. Some items you may turn in a little late, other items you must turn in or else you lose the points. Specifically this week, there's definitely a syllabus quiz, there's a discussion you must complete, there's a write-up that you have to complete. I will cover all this in the Canvas video, which is separate from this lecture video. Part of your assignment is to watch the Geospatial Revolution. There are 5 Geospatial Revolution videos that give you a great background about GIS. When you, after you watch the videos, you'll take a quiz on each video. If you don't do so well in the videos, there is a bonus so you can make up all the points that you lost. But it takes a considerable amount of work over and above the quizzes, so I suggest you watch the videos, take the quiz, and then move on to the next assignment. Some of my goals. Day 1 would be to introduce you to GIS 311, reduce any fear you have about the course, and of course get you excited about GIS. GIS 311 is one of my favorite courses to teach because of the learning curve. Students come in not knowing hardly anything about GIS and then end up creating exceptional maps and doing exceptional analyses by the end of the course. And for the most part, can use it in every other course that they take throughout their career here. And some decide to join the certificate and become quite proficient in GIS and using that as a stepping stone for their career. I'm going to answer all of your questions about ARC Online and ARC Pro and hopefully get everyone up to speed on Windows and the course. Setting up ArcGIS Online. You should have received an email from ArcGIS Online or notifications at ArcGIS or ArcGIS, something like that. But it's notifications for sure. Please follow the directions to complete that process. You will provide your actual address. Use the proper case on your name because that'll go on some certificates. Use your UW email. You are a student and the organization is the University of Washington. And that will give you access to ArcGIS Online and also Arc Pro, the software that you'll be using primarily for all of your labs in GIS 311. If you're going to download the software, and you're not on campus, you're going to need the Big IP Edge client. It is optional. This is only for your personal computers or if you borrow a computer from IT, for example, but you will need this if you need to download the software and you are not on campus. So you can get away with not using this software, but if you'd like to, feel free to just Google UW Big IP and download and install it. It'll provide you with all the directions. The best way to learn GIS. The best way probably is the second bullet, which is doing GIS. You can be artsy and sciencey or a mix of both. It will probably take a combination of both to be very successful in this class, because there is some science to it and there's also some art to it. Personally, I was not so great with the art part, but I was able to do well enough, and most students are as well. You can learn a little bit by reading, but only the basics. And that's why we don't do that much reading in this course, to be honest. You'll need to utilize references. What I'd like you to do is use your brain like a processor, not as a storage device. Yes, some things will stick in your brain, but for the most part, you'll be solving problems, and therefore problem solving, that's the best way to do GIS. The things that you repeat over and over, you will obviously pick up into your short and long-term memory, but a lot of the stuff you're going to have to do on the fly, and that'll require problem solving. You can utilize references while you're problem solving, using videos, tutorials, lesson plans, or learning plans, to complete some tasks. And again, some of those will stick in your memory, and others you'll have to go back and revisit as you're continuing through this course. Making mistakes and then fixing your mistakes is probably the best way to learn GIS. For example, submitting a lab and earning 1 or 2 out of 50 points or even 100 points, and then fixing the lab through some redos and resubmits will help reinforce the positive aspects of what you do in the lab, and you'll take that forward into the next lab and the next lab throughout the course, and then perhaps throughout the GIS certificate if you enroll. What is GIS? So for this, I suggest you go to the PowerPoint deck and click on this link, or you can just Google or type in that link if you'd like. Geographic information systems, in the old school way, it's similar to overheads. Some of you may have experienced this level of boredom in high school, where there was an overhead machine and the teacher used to put plastic sheets down. Those plastic sheets are like layers, and those layers are the beauty of GIS. So we're working in layers of data. And in our case, the layers will be unique in that one layer will have all population data. Another layer will have all the schools. Another layer will have the counties. So each piece of plastic is their own piece of data, and that is called a layer or a piece of data in GIS. You will learn all about this in Lab X, but more particularly in Lab 1. I'll be giving you some examples up here in a couple minutes. And then there's my YouTube videos. You can go and review some YouTube videos. These are now being changed over to ArcGIS Pro rather than ArcMap. So there'll be new videos published quite often in GIS 311, this course. And then be sure to Google anything you want with the letters AND GIS at the end of it. So school boundaries and GIS, or crime data and GIS, etc., to help you problem solve. You may even want to add Esri or Arc Pro if you're looking for specific information. Basic file management. You're going to need to learn or utilize some basic file management in this course because GIS data is very particular. It needs to be stored properly, and we need to know exactly where the data is. The software needs to be able to find the data. So throughout this course, and especially in Lab X and the first other couple labs, Lab 1 and 2, there will be some specific instructions on how to store your data properly. This right here, this PC, as it's detailed, this is in dark mode. I prefer to work in dark mode rather than the bright mode. This could also be considered File Explorer, Windows Explorer. On the school's PCs, it's called this PC. So that's to help you not get confused, so you can definitely find it. My job is to guide you into becoming semi-self-sufficient in GIS. I answer emails within 24 hours, and if I don't, please feel free to forward it back to me and say, hey, Gregory, I think you may have missed this. If you're polite, I'll be polite back. I'll apologize for missing your email, and then I'll answer your question. I will not give you the easy answers, but I will guide you to help discover the answer, and that'll make you more self-sufficient in GIS. Just for fun, I put up the UW purple, gold, and metallic gold color numbers, for example. Usually we use hex codes. So you notice that the hex code for purple is right here, the hex code for gold is right here, and then metallic gold is right there. And this is also in other areas, the reference areas. But I thought I'd put it up here because colors are important. Moving right along. What is GIS? Well, essentially, one of the best ways to explain it is this. Capturing, storing, manipulating, analyzing, managing, and presenting data, usually in the form of maps. That's what I start when I tell people. So what is this data? This data is a combination of layers, as I was speaking about a couple slides ago. In this case, these are raster layers. That's a specific type of data that's like an image. So these are pixels, very much like a JPEG or a PNG. We use a lot more PNGs in GIS than we do JPEGs. And then there's vector data. Vectors can come in the forms of points, lines, or polygons. And polygons are things like counties, or so county boundaries or school boundaries or your house land boundaries. Points can be cities, but cities could also be polygons. And you can think of lines as streets or rivers. We'll talk a lot about this a lot as we progress through today's lecture and in future weeks of GIS 311. This is an example, an old example of ArcMap of Lab 1. So I just wanted to show you, just in case you happen across something like this, this is ArcMap. We're using a different software called ArcPro, and this is the latest and greatest Arc software. I'm using the dark mode again, and all of the items over here where there's a check mark, these are the layers that make up the map. And in class there will be a little bit different, there'll be more of a demonstration of the layers, but for now picture each of these items as a layer. This is a layout, so there's text boxes, there's a legend, a north arrow, etc. But the data within the map are actual layers. Here's another ArcPro it's not lab 1. It looks like lab 9, and it's from a different course, but it still shows that these are layers. In this case, this is an RGB raster, so red, green, and blue raster. It's not turned on, so you don't see it. But this Tacoma Streets in red, notice how it's symbolized in red, Tacoma Streets is a vector line layer. In this course, you won't be building a portfolio, but if you join the GIS certificate, you will be building a portfolio. And when you build your portfolio, you're going to include some of the labs that you've completed. And this becomes part of your digital resume, so to speak, for when you start applying for internships and jobs. So this is just a quick screenshot of a student's portfolio that contains several GIS projects or labs that this person completed. I'm now going to run through some maps and talk about them in terms of GIS and how they could relate to you. So this is or was created in GIS. This was created with ArcMap, version 9 or 8 perhaps. This was before ArcGIS Pro was available. But it's just a basic descriptive map. It's not really any analysis for GIS. This also is ArcMap. It is GIS because it's created. You're viewing it in ArcMap. Here are 2 layers. One is a county layer, and then there's a lat and long layer of lines. So we have polygons and lines in this map. We could add major cities as points throughout the map, and then we'd have points, lines, and polygons. This is Arc Pro, and this has some polygons. There's some lines as well, and again, this is the dark mode in Arc Pro. This is your lab 2. You'll be completing this lab in several weeks. And this isn't a great example, but I include it just to show a decent example. So this is a student submission. Their name has been hidden just to protect the innocent. This shows the difference in voting between 2008 and 2012 for president by county. So the Dem rep are counties that voted for a Democratic president in 2008, but then a Republican president in 2012. The Dems or Democrat voted for president in 08 and 12, and the Rep are the Republican voted. These counties voted for a Republican in 2008 and a Republican for 2012 for president. Here's a little bit different version of Lab 2 for GIS 311. It's a little bit more detailed. It has all of the maps that you'll be creating in your Lab 2. This one back here was just one map that the student created a poster with. This is a poor example of Lab 3, and I show it just to point out a couple things. This is still in pastel default colors, and we try to get rid of all the pastels before we submit anything in this class. Pastels are great if you're creating an Easter map, which you may do, maybe a map of all the Easter eggs at somebody's house or in a field. But 99.999% of your maps are not Easter maps, so we'll rid our maps of any pastels before we submit them. This is another Lab 3. This is a great version of Lab 3. Feel free to pause these and look at them, or refer back to this when you get to Lab 3. This is Lab 4. a pretty good one. They used pastel colors, but they chose this color, so it's not as bad as the default colors. Here's another version of Lab 4. This is a pretty good one. There's still some issues with it. For example, too many decimals, but not bad for Lab 4. Here's another version of Lab 4 focusing on different data. This is Lab 5, so now we have a raster or an orthophoto and some points. You notice these red somethings, whatever they are. These points in red complement the map, which is a raster. And these are public art displays in Tacoma. Here's a different aspect of Lab 5. These are polygons that were drawn by the student. You will be editing data. There are some blue points, some red lines, vector data as well. There's also the raster below, so that's the pixel version. And then some polygons, again, that you will draw. Lab 6 is using census data. This map represents the percentage of homeowners by county. And it's an okay map. The legend has some underscores, which isn't great. The decimals in here are not great. But I show it to you to show you what a decent C level map would be. So this is more of a 2.0 or C okay map. Actually not C, but you'd probably earn a C on it. Whereas this one with percentages and no underscores looks much better. This would be more of a B or an A level map. And then a different version. This is focusing on the county and poverty. Percentage of folks below poverty. So a little bit different part of Lab 6. And then I'm looking for more Lab 6 images. So perhaps yours will be chosen for future display. Here's a Lab 6 bonus, which looks very nice. There's a hillshade below here that gives us depth. Some lines, polygons, labeling, a beautiful legend. This is a great submission for Lab 6 bonus. And then Lab 7. Here's a very good submission. You notice how these maps are getting better and better as we continue through the course. And last but not least, the Lab 7 bonus. Oh, I guess there isn't one more bonus coming up. This is a larger map, a Lab 7 bonus. To earn, the student wanted to earn extra points, so they completed the bonus. And the last Lab 7 bonus. This has the addition of an image, which is always nice. Here's another image, some text boxes, so you can tell that the quality of these maps are increasing throughout the quarter. And again, I'm looking for more maps, so perhaps I'll choose use and include it from this quarter. And then there's Lab 8, where you create an online map of earthquakes. And this is almost real-time data. You collect data from the previous 24 hours and then build an online application with the data that you find. So this is a very interesting map. This is usually the first portfolio item that people utilize because it's a very cool map. It looks very professional and is pretty impressive to future employers. So some things to think about. I'm going to talk about these in class, but I just want to run through them. Try to pause these and try to think of what these symbols represent. I'm not going to give it away here, but what does this red represent? And there is no labeling, of course, so you can't tell, or no legend, but something to think about. Pause, try to figure it out, and then move on. In this case, what does the red and the blue represent? Feel free to pause and then move on when you're ready. What does this green represent? What do these colors represent? So red usually is bad, I'll give you that. And then going from a light color to a darker color usually indicates that there's less of something here, more here, and even more here where it's darker. So pause this and try to determine what you think this might be in preparation for class. So pre-GIS, these are tablets. This is a tablet. This is a map on a tablet. You will learn about this from in the geospatial revolution videos, but I wanted to throw them up there just to relate back to the geospatial revolution homework assignment. This is the first GIS. Technically, it's 1832, and this is a depiction of what this person, Charles, represented the 48 districts of the city in Paris by a half-tone color non-gradient according to the percentages of death by cholera per 1,000 inhabitants. And if you go to the slide deck, you can click on this link to get to the actual article and to see this map to read more about it. This is also, I think this is also in the geospatial revolution. The actual first GIS analysis is from 1854, a cholera outbreak in London, and the analysis was to use points to represent the locations of individual cases of cholera. And from there, it was determined that perhaps one of the wells on Broad Street was contaminated. They shut off the well, and the incidence of death started to decline. So it's an interesting analysis of GIS. That's the earliest use of geographic methodology in epidemiology. Here's a mini history of GIS. The link is provided. Feel free to grab those from the PowerPoint slide deck. I've summarized a little bit here. I don't need to read this for you. Please feel free to pause it and just take a peek if you're interested. Current GIS, and by current I'm going back to 1970, ArcMap will no longer be supported in 2026, which is why we're using ArcPro. Some other developments, feel free to pause this, but GIS has not always been Esri. It has for quite a while, but it didn't start out with Esri. You'll learn about some of these other things when you take other GIS classes. You may be interested to know that there were 17 people in the GIS certificate back in 2008, and now we have upwards of 40 students in the GIS certificate, and the GIS has expanded considerably. Mapping the course. So Zoom, there probably won't be any Zoom unless we have a snow day, which I doubt, or class gets canceled for some reason. But classroom rules, there's technically no eating or drinking in the classroom. Usually when I'm lecturing, it's me talking versus all other students. So although there will be group work when everybody else is talking and I'm just wandering around the room helping groups. If you have questions on the syllabus, feel free to ask me or in this general discussion online. If you need accommodations, please email me separately. I will also get an email if that's the case, from the school. In Canvas, you should probably set your preferences and your notifications. There is no midterm or final. Oh, by the way, this is Mount Rainier, and this is showing the different paths up Mount Rainier. Lab X will be your first GIS lab. There is a Lab Z this week, but Lab X starts next week. You may start Lab X as soon as you're ready. It is available in future modules. I have some key points on the next slide, and homework is usually doing what you're doing right now, which is watching a video, completing a quiz, watching a video lecture, some skills, techniques, etc. We usually use in-class time for labs, and in that case this class is flipped. So you do the parts that you can't get stuck on at home, and then when you're in the classroom you do the parts that are harder, and that helps students not get stuck on the labs, so you don't have to wait a day or so to hear back from me regarding your question. Some key points. You will need a computer. There are computer labs on campus. You can do the work in the classroom. We're going to have a lot of in-class time, hence the lectures during the week and class time used for labs. You will need a USB, although you could get away with it if you have your own computer, but I would use a USB as a backup. Before you install Arc Pro, disable Microsoft's OneDrive. It is annoying, and it makes it very difficult to install Arc Pro. If you have questions, please ask. Contribute to your own learning. This is probably the most important thing for your learning, is just to realize that I encourage questions, and if you have a question, chances are somebody else has the same question. If you see an error, submit to the error discussion board bonus. That's where you find errors in the directions for labs that I've created. If you think I've done it improperly, then feel free to submit and you earn bonus points. And you can read about that in the error discussion bonus area. Whenever I say user ID, I mean your net ID, your user ID. Don't type out USER ID. That's always your user ID, and they're all unique. From now on, in this class, you will always use underscores instead of spaces in file and folder names, going all the way back to the root. And the root is the D drive or the C drive. And we don't use any spaces or funky characters like the pound sign or the and sign or the caret or percentage. We have to use just letters and numbers and underscores. Be sure to follow the directions exactly. These labs do work. They've been working for a long time. And if you follow the directions exactly, they will work. I highly suggest you keep a handwritten or digital notebook for every lab, because you're going to have to take notes and you're going to have to answer questions and take a quiz or submit a write-up at the end of the lab. That's one of your deliverables for every lab. And feel free to help each other, but don't share work. Set up groups however you'd like to. Either it's a text group or a Google group. There's no shame in collaborating, but just don't share your work. It's easy to tell when students share their work. LabX introduction. This will be next week, so I'm going to pause on this for right now. What is GIS? So if I were to pause right now and ask you in class, okay, what is your definition of GIS? Hopefully you would say something to the effect of capturing, storing, manipulating, analyzing, managing, and presenting data, usually in the form of maps. You should also remember that vector data includes points, lines, and polygons, and raster data is more of a pixel, like you would take with your phone. Here are some points, lines, and polygons. In GIS, they're represented with dots for points, lines for railroads, and polygons for polygons. Notice at one point I said cities could be a point, or in this case, the city is actually a polygon. So it could be either. It depends on the data type. Folder connection. This will be a demo in class, but folder connections are how we connect to our data. And again, it goes back to keeping a very well-formatted directory of your data. And we must add these within folders. We'll be talking a lot about this, and this will become second nature. Here's another version. This is from a different class. I have multiple folders connected to this project. Everything we do in GIS or Arc Pro is called a project. You notice I have some layers here and then some other documents. Just as more of a slide to show you the interface. As I just mentioned, everything you do in Arc Pro is called a project. And a project has databases, it has folders, it has maps. Styles we won't use that much. We do use toolboxes, and we create layouts. So primarily you'll be working with databases, folders, maps, toolboxes, and layouts. And you will know what a folder connection is by the end of class, the first week of class, and definitely the second week of class. Folder connections are necessary in GIS, and it's how we relate our data to our Arc Pro project. It is a path to the data that we cannot allow to be broken. If it does get broken, we can fix it, but it's easier if we never break that path. And think of it as an imaginary line or directions. Hey, your data is in this folder. I will give you a demo in class using Catalog of Arc Pro. And I will also give a demo of extracting, so you don't have what's called a double folder issue. So this is just heads up for some of the demos that you'll see in class. Wrapping up day one, you should know what is due. Please feel free to ask questions in class. You will be free to work on your assignments, or you may head out. You folks pay to be here. I am not going to keep folks in the classroom. Usually I'll leave around 8 p.m. I may stay till 8:35, but we don't really need to be there that long. But often some students stay to complete the lab. A few slides ago I talked about needing a computer. You can use the computers in the classroom. You can utilize Pinkerton 131 or 130 when the labs are open, and you may also go to the library or other computer labs on campus. There's plenty of computers that have GIS software. And yes, you may install the software on your own computers, but that is not necessary. There's plenty of computers around campus for you to use, and you have access to the computers in this building because we've hired a lab assistant to open up the lab. The lab hours for the lab assistant are on the doors to both of the two lab areas, 131 and 130. This is Lab X, and you'll be doing this next week. But I just wanted to give you a little hint of what it looks like. You're going to have all of these components, which right now will look a little bit busy and look a little bit overwhelming. But the great part is you're going to fully understand this in a week or so. And here's another version with everything showing. I just wanted to, I just bumped up the size of the catalog so you can fully read it. And that's the conclusion of the day one PowerPoint. The slide deck is available. Feel free to rewind or rewatch this video. And as a reminder, all the lectures, or most, will be done for homework rather than in the classroom. Because in the classroom, we're going to try to focus on demos and getting your work done so that I'm there and the volunteers are there to help you, to get you through the labs. And the great thing is you'll be able to start the lab early, so if you do get stuck, then when you come into the classroom, after a few quick demos, you can get right to work and on solving your problems, and I'll be happy to help. So that concludes our day one lecture of GIS 311.